Good evening, everybody. How is everyone feeling in the heat? Hope everybody's doing well tonight. We are so excited, wherever you are, that you are going to be a part of this wonderful, wonderful session concerning Black Families Matter. We have some wonderful guests by popular demand from last week. You asked for a part two, and we are getting ready to start part two. So we have our clinicians, our marriage and family counselors, licensed and accredited and just great at what they do, none other than Billy and Tina Frazier. And in addition to them, we have our millennial married couple with three wonderful children, boys. They're back by popular demand as well. And that is Brittany and Omar. Omar and Brittany. Thank you guys for being here. And our special guest tonight is none other than he's my son, not by biological, but by every other sense of the word. This is my dude, and it's none other than Mr. Akmir Carter. And he's going to have a lot of information for us tonight. So we're going to get underway because we got an hour and it goes so fast. As our usual custom, we offer up a word of prayer as we move forward in this segment. Let us pray. Dear Father God, we thank you for who you are, what you mean and represent to each of us. Oh God, we are nothing without you, and we can do nothing without you. We ask that you would look on everyone that is going through this devastation period in our lives. Look on those that are bereaved, those that are saddened, those are having mental health challenges. We ask that tonight, that something we say or do may help lighten the load for those that are going through. And we thank you for all of those on the line. We pray for your wisdom, your knowledge, and understanding. In your name we pray. Amen and amen. So guys, thank you again so much for being with us tonight. I got to tell you, when I first started the segments, it was really for just a couple of segments. And I think I'm going to stop counting how many segments, because as long as there's need, we will be here. We are so honored to be with our wonderful guests tonight. They have so much information to share. But I did hear last week, one of the things you said is that our married couples made marriage look easy. Marriage made easy. However, we want to also let you know, for those of you that are saying, mine is not easy, they're going to talk to us tonight about why it's not easy, and that theirs has not always been easy. And they're going to be a little transparent with us tonight. And in addition to that, the question still on the table is, can you raise children outside of the home? And Mr. Akmir Carter, all the way from Utica, New York, is with us. He is an educator, special ed specialist, and his target population is at-risk boys. He can quiet a room in less than 2 minutes. So we are just honored to have him, and he is also a father who lives outside of the home, and he's going to share with us tonight. So start putting your questions in the chat. Start putting your questions however you're doing on Facebook, and one of the team members will surely make sure that we get and answer those questions tonight. So to kick the party off, Tina and Billy, are you ready? Are my Tina and Billy ready? I didn't hear them.
Yes, we're ready.
We're ready.
Gotcha. So, what would you say to the people who said that last week you made marriage look easy? That the two of you made marriage look easy. Okay, I'm going to put that question to you two first, and then to Brittany and Omar. Is it easy, guys?
Absolutely not. We made it. Y'all think it looked easy because you see the after effect of the product.
Looks are deceiving.
You didn't see us while we were cooking and baking and all of the things and the ingredients that had to go into us to make us who we are today. So you're looking at a product that baked for almost 36 years now. So you would think it looked easy, but we will take you along our journey, because marriage is hard work, and marriage requires you to be intentional about it, because conflict comes with marriage. It is a part. It is us coming from two different cultures, backgrounds, environments, and trying to mesh into one. He has a way of thinking, I have a way of thinking, and at the same time, we want to be interdependent, but not lose our independence. So it's not easy by no means, but it's worth it.
But can it be easy? It can be easy. Because if you mesh the two people and they are so in tune with each other, it can look easy from the outside, but the inside it might be turmoil. So is a lot of marriages that look like everything is fun and dandy and happy and, you know, peanut butter and jelly, but inside is burnt steak and French fries that is undercooked. But it can be easy if you want it to be easy. Every marriage do not go through struggles. They will be tested in time, but it's the way you go through it that makes it easy.
That's good. The way you go through it, the way you look at it, your perception of it, my perception of it. So we can either make it a struggle, or we can take the time to learn each other. I think last week I said the greatest thing that you could be in marriage is your spouse number one student. You are always in school in marriage.
You're always in school in marriage?
Always in school.
And school is never out, not even for summer.
Yeah, well, I quit school in 3 years. Let me focus, Dr. Young. So, Brittany and Omar, what do you have to say?
It's hard. See, but we were supposed to be promoting Black families and Black marriages, so we had to reel you in, and that's how we got to part 2. So now that we're here, we could talk about the struggle. In the beginning, we didn't want to make it look easy. We wanted to promote it. If we had started off talking about how difficult it was, we would have turned you away. So we're here today, and we're going to be a little more transparent about those struggles. But no, it's not easy. And we're only 5 years in. And a lot of times I feel like I look at people who made it, like Billy and Tina, to 30, 36 years. And I'm like, I really don't know how they did that, because we're at 5 and it can be really rough. So yeah, no, it's not easy.
Want to add to that, Omar?
There's a quote that says, "A new love is wonderful. Time just makes it ugly." And over time, it does. New love is wonderful. Time just makes it ugly.
Wow.
So time. So over time, it can show, like, it can rear its ugly head. But you choose to fall back into love. You choose to rekindle that new love. So it's not easy. It's your choice, her choice. It's your union's choice to fall back into love and be good.
Thank you. You better say that out. Akmir, you want to add to that? What is the importance of like family and being with people and?
Well, I'm not married, but I have been in a long-term relationship with my kid's mother, 18 years to be exact. So there has been, I can relate to the fact that there are a lot of trials and tribulations that come with being with somebody over a long period of time. The thing that makes a union work, like Billy and Tina said, is the fact that we are different and we all bring different things to the table. Whether that is when we meet, we go through different stages. We fall in love, we can fall out of love depending on situations and circumstances. And I think that it greatly contributes to a unionship. I think the most important thing is to understand where your partner is, what they bring to the table, what you bring to the table, and how you're going to mesh that into creating a union. Nothing is perfect, but how you're able to coexist with one another and build a family and move forward is what makes everything work. And sometimes it doesn't, and hopefully, we'll be able to get in touch with some of the things that make things fall apart or a little unsuccessful down the road.
Yeah, we sure are. We're going to go right there tonight. For those of you who are just tuning in and you didn't hear last week, you know, we're all in this struggle with Black Lives Matters. But one of the things that I feel why we struggle as a people is because of the breakdown of our families, and that so many of our families are quote unquote headed by females, and we can't, the father's role is either downplayed or muted, or it's there and we just don't know about it. So as you probably have seen on the news and in the urban cities, there's so much gun violence. These teenage boys just running around with guns and have no respect for human life, as though they're playing a video game and just shooting people. And that's why it's important that there is a good family structure so that we can teach our children how to think about consequences of actions and the sanctity of human life. Yeah. So, Billy and Tina, if I had to ask you to give me an example of one of those times in this 36 years where it was really hard, is there something that you can share with the audience?
Really hard. Oh God, it's a whole lot. What do I pick? I say the hardest thing was infidelity. Getting through that was the hardest part, especially if it was me. It was me. So getting past that was rough. Ourselves, we've been to counseling, and we've learned a lot about ourselves that we didn't know about ourselves. And after we got off that hurdle, then everything else went, I guess, pretty smooth.
It went better because we understood where we were selfish. We understood where the mistrust came in, where needs were not met. So it made us become very aware of what the other one was doing and not to take each other for granted. So often in relationships, we take each other for granted and just assume we started this, you're gonna be here, and it don't require any extra. But the same thing that you do dating, you continue to date. You continue to date your partner. You continue to communicate, because the lack of communication opens another door, not knowing how to understand each other. And the thing that I learned during that season is that be a listener. Like sometimes we as women, I'm gonna get my point across because you know I got this mouth. There was one thing that Billy
and you got your point across.
And I got my point across. And sometimes getting your point across will go at any cost where it tears down a man, it tears down each other, and we use words to almost kill each other and think that it would make you a better person at the end. But that's not communicating. That's not understanding. That's not listening. And we had to learn how to listen. We learned how to really express the need, express what was wanted, express what I can and cannot. We had to talk through expectations. Were they realistic or unrealistic? And we had to really look at things and say, where am I being selfish and where am I being immature? Because marriage is for mature people. It is not a place for immaturity. Relationships, long-term, to really stick things out, you gotta be mature.
And you gotta learn yourself. And in my part, I didn't know me. You know, I thought I was this, and I wound up not being that, living up to the image of the things or the people I've seen growing up, the people I used to hang with. So all of that going through my mind and all of that going through my psyche, not knowing or seeing positive examples of real relationship and real how a real husband is supposed to take care of the wife and a real father and so on and so forth. So I use all of those things as an excuse and went and did me.
Okay.
Until I learned doing me is not the right thing to do when you in marriage. You got to do us. It's not a me thing. It's an us thing.
Woo! So, I'm going to move on, but this is what I'm going to say to you, and we're going to come back to your answer. So infidelity is not a reason for divorce. I'm gonna let you hold that for a minute and come back to it. So, Omar and Brittany, want to share one of those moments where things just seem rough? Because, you know, in 5 years, you guys' lives have changed drastically. You are responsible for 3 new human beings in 5 years. And, well, really more than that. And also just the struggle of life, trying to make it do what it do and trying to live up to your expectations and everybody else's expectations. What would you like to share with us tonight?
Oh, it's still a struggle. It's a we're in that learning process now.
Mm-hmm.
We're in that learning process where hopefully we get to the place where Billy and Tina are, where we're still trying to figure out ourselves. And somebody once, we were talking about, like, we were reminiscing about high school, and they turned around and they said to their wife at the, I think he was talking to his wife, and he was like, "Oh, I wish we were high school sweethearts too." And I was like, "Whoa, let me stop you there," because as cool as it is that we've been in each other's lives for so long, I feel like the disadvantage of that is, like, when we start out in a relationship at 16, 17, we don't even know who we are yet. And so, like, now we're going through that process of figuring out who we are individually and trying to function in a marriage. And that's hard. And we get into a place sometimes where it's like, well, we've been together for so long, like, what real issues can exist? Like, you know, we talk about this idea of, like, I'm bringing my baggage and you bringing your baggage. And it's like, well, if you've been with somebody since you're 16, what baggage can you have? And now we're starting to see how, like, our childhoods, all the things from our childhood is surfacing, things, you know, that we experienced, even that we didn't communicate in high school, starting to surface. Those traumas, those things that we never talked about, how they're starting to impact our marriage. And one of the biggest things I would say that for us led to struggle was this idea of I'm helping. And sometimes when you're helping someone, it communicates the idea that you feel like you're better. And I feel like a lot of the problems that we've had, I'll say my mentality was always like, oh, but I'm helping him. Like, we're working as a team. And not knowing how he was internalizing, like, she doesn't think I'm good enough. And so that's something that we're working through, and we're learning now, like, how to communicate those struggles.
That's very powerful, Brittany. Very powerful. But that women are God helpers, but that's a whole nother subject. We got to help God make you do right. Go ahead, Omar.
I don't know how much more I can add to it.
Yeah, you did, Owen.
No, for me, as you guys can see, like, she's able to talk. Like, she is able to talk. Me, on the other hand, I'm very, very few words come out of my mouth, if ever. And yeah, there are times where I do want to say something and I regret not saying it at the time. So communication definitely has been the biggest, if not, yeah, the biggest thing to have a setback or have myself set back, because at times, if I'm not speaking to her, then I would have to speak to somebody else. So communication, especially between her and me, trying to mesh, and me accepting her voice, but also adding my voice to our union has been, like, the biggest thing for us. Well, for me, because she's able to speak.
Absolutely. Well said. Akmir, you want to add to that? Yes. I've watched you, you know, with your mom and your dad, you've seen it yourself. And one of the things Brittany mentioned was, you know, your childhood following you into your relationships.
Well, in my opinion alone, just speaking from my experience, there's that, you know, that nature versus nurture dynamic that comes into play. How's your environment affecting you versus how is your home affecting your behaviors? And I think speaking from my point as a man, first being a young man, and seeing the dynamic of what family is for me, with my own eyes, greatly affected how I parent and establish myself in a relationship with my kid's mother in the beginning. So when you see all these different things that come about, when you see infidelity, when you see abuse, when you see drugs, when you see all these things that impact a relationship or impact a marriage, because my mother and my stepfather were married and still are, that greatly changes the scope of how you look at things as a young man. And you tend to look at how your mother was treated, how your grandmother may be treated, how your sisters and cousins are treated, and you develop a sense of that. You take part of that sometimes whether you realize it or not. And me as a young man, I learned early on that I realized that I did not trust women. And I did that unconsciously. And a lot of that became from a lot of things that I had to deal with my mother and my grandmother and things like that. But then that affected my relationships, especially with my children's mother. And it developed trust issues. And when you don't have trust and you have broken communication, you know what I'm saying, it's very, very hard to establish a sense of unionship and to move forward together, because both of y'all are not at the same place. And how you deal with that can be very, very tough. For me, it was a lot of soul searching, and it took a very, very long time for me to realize where I was, what my purpose was, what was I contributing to a relationship, good, bad, or indifferent, and was that relationship at that point best to continue to be in for myself, for my kid's mother, and most importantly for my children. And I had to make that decision, and that greatly impacted the scope of my family at that particular time.
Wow. When I tell you, you all are amazing tonight, I am really, really enjoying this segment. And for Akmir, for you to say and to be able to admit that you had a trust issue, and in particularly with women, and to be able to just say that now, I think is just so freeing, so freeing. Same thing with all of the things that I'm hearing. So back to you, Billy and Tina. I'm sure you heard everything as well. So back to the question I asked for at the end of your statement: is infidelity a reason to quit?
No, it's not a reason to quit. One thing Brittany said about the baggage everybody carries into a relationship or through life, period. It depends on how your experiences load the luggage up. When we're born, we start off with a little diaper bag. Then we grow up, we get a knapsack. And when we get a little in the teenage years, we get a suitcase. And then when we get older, we carrying around a big trunk. And all of these are your experiences of everything that happened to you in life. So when you come from a family of people that cheat, you're carrying that along, so you will cheat. You're carrying along with your father's sins and your mother's sins and your grandfather's sins. But can you get over the hump of infidelity? Yes, you can, because it comes to a conscious effort to believe that, look, enough's enough. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to repent, so to say, and turn away from those habits that are tearing not only yourself down, but your partner down. So yes, you can come back from infidelity. I'm a witness to that. But it's the point of, you got to say, you know what? Is it worth it? Is what I have more important than getting some tail on the side? That's the point of, that's each individual decision that everybody got to make.
You got to understand the grass always look greener on the other side, but that's astroturf.
Sometimes.
That's astroturf. Trust me, it's not real grass, y'all. It's not real grass. Because if you water your grass and you fertilize your grass will grow too. It's astroturf. It will always, anytime cheating, that is the whole way the system is built up to always make it look alluring because it's sneaking. It's something I'm not supposed to do. So because I'm not supposed to do, it is that innate nature that says, try it, because you're not supposed to do it. So anything that's supposed to be off limits, it makes us a little more curious. But can we forgive? Yes, you can apply forgiveness, but you only can apply it when a person gets to that place where they can admit it. So we didn't go through a phase where he couldn't admit it. We had to go get counseling. We had to get help to find out what's the driving force there. What's going on? Like, let's not just throw it under the cover, act like it didn't exist, because that's when it keeps reoccurring when you don't address it, when you don't work through it.
Okay, and also you have to put parameters in place so you can guard yourself. Accountability. So you guard yourself so you won't do it again. If you are with friends that are dogs, then you cut the friends off. Or you with family members that are promiscuous, then you cut them off also. If you want to guard your relationship in yourself, it's like an alcoholic. I'm a reformed alcoholic. I'm not gonna go into a bar and go preach the gospel because I know my weakness. You gotta know your weakness. And once you know your weakness, you stay away from your weakness. If your weakness is cigarettes, you don't go where people smoke. If your weakness is alcohol, you don't go to the bar or the liquor store. You have to know your weakness, recognize your weakness, and shy away from it.
Wow.
And be accountable. I am ultimately his accountability partner. So let me say this about infidelity, because a lot of times we paint it that it's just sexual, but it's not. You can have emotional infidelity. You can have church infidelity. And you say, what? What do you mean? When you begin, or an organization, where you get into an organization and it becomes all about that particular thing and you omit your spouse from it. So you're on the phone talking to the choir director all day, all night, and you have nothing to share with your spouse about that. Now you and this person are starting to engage all day long. You are talking about everything. And the commonality between you and this person is growing because you both love the same thing. And you have to be mindful of that. That happens with your job. You can fall in love with your job and just forget about your spouse. So it is not one-dimensional that you end up in infidelity. It has a lot of legs to it. It has a lot of arms to it. And we have to learn how to admit it. And how we as couples manage through it is become accountability. I don't police any man. I'm just not. Let me tell you something Billy and I said when we first started. We got married. I was 20. He was 24. Right? Got married. Didn't know much. Didn't know anything. We didn't have nothing. Everything we built together. We had nothing, right? So our communication was, listen, we're not having domestic violence, one, because I'm straight up from the projects, right? No, I'm telling y'all the truth. I'm straight up from the projects, right? Billy grew up in Canarsie, back in the 1984s, So it was really a different dynamic back there, right? So I came out the projects, so I said, now, if you hit me, I grew up with I have brothers. You hit me, I'm going to hit you back, and we're going to have a street fight. We're not having domestic violence. So what we did was said, listen, we won't use that tactic or tool. That's one thing that we sat down and physically said, we will not allow that to be a part of our relationship. And we didn't. So I can honestly tell you, we have never raised hands to one another.
But you like to be spanked. It's okay.
Billy,
right.
absolutely.
That don't hurt, Billy? No, let me. I'm moving. So.
Go ahead.
Yeah, listen here. Number one, I used to say that all men are dogs. And one day I said that in front of somebody, and they said, well, you need to get out of the kennel. And I said, I didn't go to the kennel. The kennel found me. So I said, well, I'm gonna straighten this statement out. You got your thoroughbreds and you got your mutts. So if you're gonna get a dog, try to get a thoroughbred. Let me focus. But this is so good. I am so excited about this. Anything you want to add to this, Omar, Brittany, and then Akmir, based on what you heard them say? Like, you have to work through this thing. Infidelity is not a reason to divorce, separate, drop, and forget the whole family. And
I think it's important to evaluate if it's worth it. That's the biggest thing. And to be honest with yourselves about if you're in a space or willing to, even if you're not the one who, let's say, was in the affair, are you willing to put in the work that's necessary to admit like how you contributed to it? It's not just like, oh, that person did, you did, like admitting, you know, how you played a role. And if you're genuinely in a space to forgive and move past, because we could say, and this is me, I'm a holder. I hold on to things for dear life and say like, okay, I let it go. And you know, the instant something triggers me, boom. And this is why, and you know, everything will resurface. And then you like, it's important to evaluate. Like, I said I forgave, but am I really doing that? Because I'm constantly, you know, triggered. Am I really actively working towards being in that space where we could move forward and not, you know, let all these things from the past resurface? So it really is a matter of like being honest with yourself and seeing if it's worth it. Because I feel like there are some people's, well, I'm not in other people's relationships, but there are some situations that could be like really, really awful. And when you start to evaluate, you don't even like know why you got married, why you got into it. The person don't bring nothing to the table. You don't bring anything to the table. It's just not working. In those situations, I feel like, okay, cheating is then going to be a deal breaker. But for those relationships where if we can work through past an affair, and the relationship is worth it, then it's not a deal breaker.
Omar?
Offline, we were talking, so she just answered for both of us.
I can't hear you. What'd you say, Omar? We missed that.
Offline, we were talking.
Uh-huh.
But he answered for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
That was our union speaking just now.
That was his union speaking. But forgiveness have nothing to do with the person that broke the covenant. Forgiveness really has to do all with you, because the thing is, you can decide, I don't want to be with that person anymore, or that was one of my non-negotiables, so we're going to leave and it's over. And that's your individual choice. But you do not forgive that person, the next relationship you go in, they're going to pay for everything the first person did. So you working through it and you're getting to a place where you can apply forgiveness, and not so much I forget, but I use it as a learning tool. Like where we are today, we went through that because we can identify when we sit and work with couples, there is something that we have to offer, not just book knowledge. And you need more than book knowledge to really be able to display empathy. But forgiveness had to do with me. Forgiveness had to do with me learning how not to hold a grudge, learning not to how to throw it up in your face. And then it could be about the garbage and it all of a sudden go into something else. So it really have to do with you. And if your marriage have other things that are going on in it, you have to take the time to address it. So often you have red flags before you got married and you went ahead and you never dealt with your red flags. You never dealt with the things that bothered you. You never dealt with the things that hurt you or the things that you weren't comfortable with. And you saw them, but you went on. So let's work through it. Let's at least try. I'll tell any couple, try. Make the effort to work.
And I think that's what the issue is. And when you are in a millennial age, and which I was, you think very hard about situations, and you are a one-liner. Akmir, you want to just chime in on any of this that you've heard so far before I change it?
I think infidelity is a very slippery slope when you look at it, because you have to look at it from 2 points of view. You have to look at it from the person who's committing the offense and the person who is receiving the backlash of, or having to deal with the fact that their partner has cheated, and that can go vice versa for the men and for the women. In my own personal experience, when I committed offenses, it came from a sense of my ego, my pride, things that I've learned and seen, where I was at in terms of how old I was, and was I in that, that preteen to early mid 20s, or that 20s, late 20s into my 30s. So, you progress and you grow as a person. However, if you continue that pattern of behavior, all the way throughout, and you haven't sat yourself down and realized that and tried to focus on some of the things that are contributing to why you're committing infidelity, it's very, very hard to break, and it affects both you and your partner. For me, I truly believe parts of infidelity comes from the fact of being selfish. You really are not prepared to want to deal with a lot of the things that a relationship brings, whether it's the problems that you may be having and whatever factors, bills, relationship, intimacy issues, all of those things are not working. And so sometimes as men, in my own personal opinion, we go to look for something that comforts us that we're not getting at home. So if I have my spouse is not being as intimate with me as I want to, then I go look for somebody who, is going to provide that for me. And a lot of times it has nothing to do with the relationship. And I was having this discussion with my queen, like during those times, it meant nothing. Actually doing it meant nothing. I had no feelings for the other person at all. But at the same time, it didn't stop me. I brought it home. It affected my home. My kid's mother at the time felt that energy, and we never communicated it. It never was discussed. And because it was never put on the table to discuss, that only fueled my ability to want to keep doing it, because it was never talked about. We never addressed it. We knew it was going on. And that ultimately put me in a space to accept that it was okay, until you get to the point where you see it really, really is tearing down parts of your relationship at home. And you have to figure out, what is it that I need to fix about myself outside of, just this intimacy or whatever excuse I'm using to go out and commit, cheating, if we want to put that on the table. And it has, can it work? I don't know. Obviously, I'm not married, and I'm in a committed relationship now. But the relationship that I was in, if I was speaking to you from being in that space, I would say no, because I wasn't in a position myself to want to address those issues, and because I had so many other things going on that contributed to me feeling that particular way. And when you're with a spouse who doesn't communicate, and I'm the one who needs immediate validation, that's a recipe for disaster. So it's where both people are at. If one is more accepting and willing to work on it, and the other person is looking inside themselves and willing to acknowledge that they have done these offenses and how it's affecting the family, then maybe. But most of the time, we're taught these behaviors. We see these behaviors as young men, and we think that it's cool. We brag about it. It's okay to do it. Our friends give us pats on the back for, committing these deeds, and things like that. And so we keep these in the back of our psyche, like this is okay. And if we never break that cycle, we continue these patterns, as older men, until we get to points where Billy and Tina were making reference on, that it has to be both of y'all coming to the table and working on these issues that you know is there and not ignoring it.
Wow. Great, Akmir. So women and men are two different creatures. I mean, as far as the north is from the south, east is from the west, we are so very different. So when we hear a man say it meant nothing to us, we don't believe that. I don't know why, I'm just saying. But thank you so much for being so transparent and helping us to understand that we are different. And I will say to all young couples that you have to wait it out. As Tina said, it's AfroTurf. The grass may not be greener on the other side. Or when you get over there, it'll be glass bottles and you're going to cut your foot, thinking that something is better. And I think that when people stay together and work together and grow each other, I often tell my clients, don't make a man for the next woman. Because all of us may have been guilty of making contributing something to the Make a Man Foundation. And then the next woman who gets him gets all your work, right? And then that woman gets an almost finished product, but you paid the price for that. So I say, if you've helped this person to be something, you work and you fight for what you believe in. You believe in your marriage. So thank you so much for you guys being so transparent. So as we talk about marriage and family, it becomes more family to me when we have to deal with our children. And children are a blank sheet of paper. Everybody that touches them leaves a fingerprint. Children are a sponge. Everything around them, they're absorbing it. Our jobs as parents is to teach and to train. Teach is what we tell them. The knowledge that we know, we tell them. But training is that demonstration in front of them. I could tell a child all day long, do not smoke. Surgeon General says it on the pack. Do not smoke cigarettes. However, as a parent, while I'm telling you the truth, I'm teaching you that it's not right to smoke, but my training is I'm puffing on it every day. So that confuses our children about what right and what wrong is. And remember, we put our relationships first when there are children around us because you're teaching them how to navigate through life, through change. So back to my question from last week, where I am leaning heavily on the side that it is impossible to raise children out of the home. So now we're going to start with Tina, with you and Billy again, who said last week, it can be done. Fathers say it can be done. So tell us, help the audience to understand whether or not you can raise children outside of the home. And I say this in particular for our fathers because most of our children are living with the mother or with women. So I'm gonna let you go first and then we're gonna circle back.
I believe it can be done. There has to be a lot in place to make it as successful as it possibly can. I don't think that anything can replace both parents having a structured environment, being in the same home for their kids. But obviously we know that that's not always the case. More so in the environments that we come from, where we see a lot of single parent households. In my dealing with my kids and my children's mother, it was a transition. But the best thing that I could say about that was both of us realized that the most important thing was our kids, thank God, regardless of the emotions and tension and issues that we were having. So that made the transition and my ability to parent my children a whole lot easier because I didn't have to deal with a lot of the backlash and emotion and the tension and the anger that comes with separation. Now, has that been a smooth transition? Absolutely not. You still have to work through things as co-parenters. With me, my kids come first, second, third, and fourth. And they are the most important thing for me. So it made my approach and transition easier because I was able to not really care about anything going on outside of my children's well-being and happiness. So that made it easier for me. That may not have made it easier for my kids, which I experienced later, because what we tend to do is we tend to ignore that the kids are in the middle of this situation and they don't necessarily have a voice. It's something that is pushed on them or something that is sprung on them immediately, and depending on where they're at in terms of age and their understanding of things, it can be very, very, very hard and traumatic for them. And I learned that the hard way. When I left, my daughter was 7 years old, but my daughter is the Spitfire one. So and my son was at the time, he was 13. So I thought that I spoke to him individually. I thought that he would be okay with it and understand. And we had a long conversation about, you know, mommy and daddy love you and we're still going to be here for you and we're still going to support you and nothing really changes. Daddy is just living outside of the home, and things are going to be a little bit different, but we're both here and we love you. And he kind of accepted that. And I had to show and prove that I was constantly there and being there, and those things has changed. When I told my daughter at the time, at 7, that, you know, daddy was leaving at the house, she went into she had a panic attack, like days, being in school, not functioning because she thought that I was leaving her completely. And it really, at that time, like woke me up to how the decisions makings that I made was affecting my children. And it was very, very, very hard for me to come out of that. I questioned myself just about every night. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm sitting in an apartment by myself, worrying about, am I doing the right thing? How is this going to affect my kids? How am I going to do this with no help? You know, and I'm being by myself. And I had to work my way through that. And I had to rebuild my way of thinking. And I had to put my kids first. And so could it work? Yes, I'm a living proof that it can, because I have my kids all the time, and I don't do it through the courts, and you know, and we have an understanding. But that understanding was built on trust that we were both going to be there for our kids. Now that doesn't usually happen in households all the time, and I understand that. But my showing and my involvement in it allowed it to be much easier for my kids' mother to know that I was there, that I was committed to our kids financially, being in their presence in their lives every single day. And that made the transition easier. And we still go through things here and there, and we have bumps in the road, but our kids now understand, and as they've gotten a little older, that daddy is here, mommy is here. We both have different lives now, but they are a extreme priority.
Woo. Well, you can get a vote on me for that one, but I just need all the other brothers to be there financially, be there in presence and all of that. Anything you want to add to that, Brittany and Omar, and then Billy and Tina, and then we got to get to the questions.
All right. So prior to us being married, we had Ethan pretty young, 19 and 20. So she had him at 19 and I was 20. One of the things she told me, because I would do anything for Ethan. We had to understand that I would do anything for my family was most important to me. And what she told me one day was, Ethan doesn't always need you financially. He needs your presence. And then from that day on, it was pretty much me, her, and Ethan, and me focusing on being there for Ethan. Well, I was there financially, taking care of him and whatnot. But I realized that through communicating with the person who you have this child with, that's the biggest way for you guys to be good, or for father to be there for his child. The two must be in constant communication and always want to then put that child first. So building off of what Mr. Carter just said. Constant communication, wanting to be there for your children is the best way that a father who was outside of the home, which I was before we got married, can be a part of a said child's life.
Wow. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. I hear the boys in the background going. Tina and Billy, anything you want to add as it relates to the raising children and family and what we need to do to make sure that our children are successful? One of the things I often say, if there's one thing worse than being alone, it's being stuck with the wrong person, especially when raising children. So Tina and Billy, let me hear what you have to say, and then we're gonna.
I just want to commend Mr. Carter for the job he has done and the relationship he's had with his baby's mama and his children. That could be commended. It does prove my point that it can happen, but there are instances where you have parents that don't see eye to eye, and they're looking out for revenge, and they're looking out for payback for the things that they have gone through in their relationship, and that destroys the children. It destroys their confidence in the parent, especially the one that is the primary caretaker, because most of the time they are telling the children lies about the father or the mother, whoever is the secondary. They're telling them lies. And one thing that their concept, right? But when the child gets of age to find out the truth, it destroys the relationship with the primary, because everything that the primary caretaker has told the child or children has been proven to be wrong. So now, who do you trust? Do you trust the primary caretaker, or do you trust the person who said, everything that I tried to do, the mother or the father stopped me from doing or coming to you as being a parent to you? So it destroys the child's confidence in the way the world goes. Now, who do I believe? The one I've been living with, or the one who comes in and say, I am daddy or I am mommy? So the gist of it is, you have to be truthful with the child from the beginning. If the relationship didn't work, it had nothing to do with the child, it has all to do with each other. So you don't tear down the father or the mother because of your jealousy or your payback, or you're killing the child. And that's the main point. Do not kill the child because of pettiness.
And I think that's the reason that our streets are so filled with young men who have been so disappointed by their fathers and by their mothers. Just so disappointed. The Bible says that a child is left to himself will bring his parents to open face shame. Open face shame, because we did not put them in the right perspective and help and nurture, because raising children is time sensitive. We only get a few minutes at it, and there are no do-overs. And to not put that effort in as the grown people has done our young people a grave disservice. And I think that we have to figure out as a people, how are we going to help these parents? For those of you that do not know, I have a book called The Joy of Single Parenting. It is not because I believe that, that's the best way, because it takes two parents, the village, and then some to get this thing right. But I have met so many people that were disgruntled for having to go it alone. And because you were so disgruntled for having to go it alone, you missed those great years of your child in that time-sensitive period. So the joy of single parent, it means if life gives you lemons, make lemonade and make it as sweet as you want it. Enjoy raising your children, even if you have to do it alone. And the Holy Spirit had to help me as a single parent who was not getting any help and felt like I was owed help, at least just show up, do something. And one day in prayer, the Spirit just said to me, well, you like something about them or those kids wouldn't have been here. Because women are emotional lovers. We don't really go to bed with somebody we don't like. And men, you need to know, even when you marry, when you make us mad, we're still emotional lovers. So I heard Akmir say, I can't get what I need here, I got to go there. It's usually because the woman mad about something. That's why she can't give you what you need and what you want. So women, single moms, look for the good in the person that was your baby's, that is your baby's father or your seed dropper. Because as I heard Akmir say, the Dana, the DNA is going to be there. And if we raise and structure our children right, the good DNA will show its head and not always the ugly DNA. Because you know how we are as women, Billy. As soon as something bad happens, we say, oh, that was on the father's side. When I take people to the psych ward, and like, let's say a person had a bad drug and they had a psychosis, we're sitting in the psych ward, the first thing that a psychiatrist asks you or the social worker will ask you is, who has mental illness in your family? Because something may have been laying dormant and the drug woke it up. But the mother will say unequivocally, every time I go, that was on the father's side. That was not on my side, right? So take a look at what you did like about that person and see that good DNA. My children's aunt, she had a PhD in math. So when Jalea came out at math at 5 years old, she was just unbelievable, beating everybody at every game in Connect Four. Grown people would try to come play with her. So I started looking at the gifts and talents in my children that was not from my DNA, but from the father's DNA. And that helped me to stomach him a little bit. I'm just kidding. I don't know who's going to see this. We like him now. We like him, Akmir. Okay, let me focus. Let's get on to the questions. Is there anything else before I get on to the questions? Okay, all right, good. Okay, we got some doozies. Rachel, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Okay, so the first question says, what do you do when you have 5 beautiful sons, then your husband of 30 years realizes he is attracted to men? How do you tell your 5 sons, and how do you keep sane or keep your sanity for the sake of the father and the son's bond?
Woo. Okay, Akmi, I'm gonna let you take that first.
That's loaded. I think the first step has to come from the father and mother, and are they willing to be able to sit down and speak to their 5 sons? Now, that's going to be, based on how old the 5 sons are. If you have a bunch of younger kids, how are they going to be able to understand what's going on? But relationships are relationships, whether they're with a man or a woman, or whether they're with a man and a man, and that has to be explained. It can't be hidden. So how do you come together to discuss a very, very sensitive topic? I think you have to put the boys' feelings and emotions first, and realize that it's not about you in that very moment, and that we have to come together and be able to explain to these 5 boys that you are no longer in the house, and that you are in a relationship. Now, if you have young kids, you can probably get by saying, daddy's just in a relationship, and it doesn't have to be about a gender, but if you have older kids, then you need to be able to sit them down and explain to them that, this is where, daddy is at, and I'm sorry that this hurt you, and, and y'all have to be able to bounce presenting it off of each other, so that y'all don't look divided and more so unified. But that's a tough one. Like, me being in that situation would be very, very hard to explain. So.
Okay, thank you. You did a good job. Okay, Brittany, and then Billy and Tina. Omar, Brittany.
I got nothing.
Got nothing for that one?
Honestly, like Akmir said, you want to be unified in talking to your boys about whatever's going on, because we talked not earlier about how perspectives can either hurt or help or hurt the child who has little say in what's going on in their life, especially as they're growing up. So if you come together unified to discuss whatever's going on from daddy's perspective, from mommy's perspective, and then a unified perspective of what's going on, it'll make it a little bit more easy to understand, especially for kids who are at the age of understanding what same-sex relationships look like or focused on. So just having that unified front as you guys go in to discuss what's going on with dad and with your marriage at that moment.
Okay, great. Tina, Ellie?
I would say the first thing I would recommend for that wife is for her to get some help first, right? Because the sheer fact that she mentioned 30 years of being in this marriage, and now he went out, she needs to get help because she needs to deal with her feelings first, because it would be very, very difficult for her to sit down and be a united front, and she is hurting people leak out.
Yeah.
She is definitely leaking out. So she has to find someone or a counselor in which she can be very real and very transparent and help her walk through the stages of her becoming whole again. That is a whole nother subject when your spouse leaves you for their same sex. It's a different mindset, is a different thought system that happens to you, especially as a woman. It's really, really different. So that would be my first thing, for her to get help first, right? And everything do depend on the age of the children, because then we need to say, how do we transition this and how do we come together and talk? Just like all of them said, Omar and Akmir, exactly. We got to sit down. We have to talk through. But my position would be that she needs some level of help first, because she is hurting, and you don't want to speak out of your hurt, because that is usually our first instinct, is to speak out of our hurt.
I'm going to speak on the child's point of view. Being a male child, and a male child feels, especially the oldest, feels like they are the protector of the home, especially they're protector of the mother. If the father comes and says, this is what is going on with me, it's not a point of understanding, because you're not going to understand. I'm sorry. If you came to me with that, I'm not going to. It depends on the age. Even if I was 15, 16, or 18, I'm still going to protect my mother, because it's going to hurt my mother. And so it's not a point of just the wife getting the help, but the children also, especially the older ones, because they have to process the hurt of now what you thought your father was, as your example of being a man, is now turned around. Now, I'm going to internalize it. If it happened to daddy, could it happen to me?
It's a lot of legs to it.
It's
so
a lot of legs to it.
They would need family counseling as a whole.
Exactly.
I 100% agree. The wife have to make that initial, because she's talking about 30 years. 30
years. But the thing about it is, you just cannot linger and just say, yo, daddy got a new relationship. You have to come, so the child don't find out by oops. You don't want the child to find out about oops, because if you find out about oops, that throws off the whole dynamics with the father. And now respect and love turn into disapproval and maybe even hate, because now you just fooled everybody. You've been married for 30 years and you didn't know you was like this? How dare you do this to us? So it's now I'm going to retaliate because you hurt me. I'm going to hurt you.
Wow. It's a deep one. Thank you so much, guys. That was a great one. Rachel, moving on. You guys did well with that. Thank you.
Okay, the next question says, Do you think having children early on in the marriage makes the marriage complicated?
Brittany and Omar. Omar and Brittany.
I would say absolutely. So this question is twofold for us because we had Ethan before we got married, and then we had Liam like right after we got married. And absolutely, because a lot of times we think about how we went into marriage, not so much as like partners in a marriage, but as parents, right? So the emphasis became on our kids and us functioning as married parents, and the focus is not on our relationship. And so we had expectations and went into into a marriage with, let's say, okay, you're a husband, but with father expectations, with mother expectations. And so when we're encountered with marital issues, we don't know what to do with them because we're so used to being the parents. And early on, once you have kids early on, it doesn't give you an opportunity to figure it out. So we didn't have an opportunity to figure out marital, how to function as partners in a marriage. We were trying to figure out how to be married parents. And so it definitely does complicate it. And especially because a lot of your time, your energy, your focus then becomes the kid, me providing for the kid, me or us, figuring out how we're going to divvy the responsibilities for the children. Our marriage gets put on the back burner. So now we already aren't clear on what our expectations are or how we're going to function as husband and wife. And now we have this new baby and another child, and we're trying to raise them, and your needs are not being met, or it absolutely does. Even I have friends that had kids really, really early on in their marriage, and it was a struggle. And they say, like, if we could have done things differently, we absolutely think that our kids are a blessing, but we would have waited longer so that we could figure out how we work, how we function married. A lot of times before you get married, you don't live together. Now we live together. We have to get used to living with this person. We didn't know all what really came with them before that. And now we add in a baby to the mix. It becomes hard. It does make marriage complicated. Well, at least I could say from our experiences.
Great. Akmir, you want to add? Omar, you want to add?
Yeah, I would love to add. As we are working to become a better union and work on why we're here, and we always got to come back to why we are married. One of the reasons why we say we married is because we were great parents to our kids. So yes, in saying that statement right there, it proves that having kids can at least hinder your marriage or your perception of why you are married. So now you have to come back and reevaluate why you are married, because you have this layer that says, hey, we married because we're such great parents and we make a partnership work because of our child and not because of the things that we bring to said marriage. I think that's the biggest thing I can think of as far as like kids and us being married.
Well said. Well said. So when you have kids, listener, caller, it's because it becomes about the kids and not about the marriage. And when you get married because you have children, how do you now figure out how to have a marriage as opposed to have a parent-to-parent relationship? Great. Akmir, you want to add to that? And then Tina and Billy, and then we're off. Our time.
I look at it in terms of any problem that you may face in a unionship, whether it be married or not. It also depends on where the two people are at the point of being married. Some people don't get married like, Brittany and Omar early and have kids early. Some people kind of wait till they're later on in life or they've accomplished things. And so they may be ready to have kids at the point of them being married. If you're in your 30s and things like that, and you accomplish certain things, it may make that a little bit easier if you have kids right away. But if you're young, you know, and you're in your teens and stuff, absolutely, I can see how it can greatly affect your marriage, because you're looking at spending time with each other and creating a better unionship and growing together. And now you have to divide that and divide your attention and everything and give that to your child. So it can be very, very challenging for a young couple, but also the dynamics also can make it, you know, not so challenging if you are established and you're ready, and you are ready for kids, and you get married. And then some people get married and in 6 months they have kids and they do fine. Some people get married, you know what I'm saying, and you know what I'm saying, and 2 years later they have kids and they do terrible. You know, so it all depends on where the people are at in their unionship and how they are looking to progress and be together. Because obviously, you know, there are people who get married and want kids, and sometimes the kids come a little early and they're okay with that. And there are people who get married and aren't looking to have kids until way later on in their lives. And then the kids come in and it kind of shuffles the plan. So it can be challenging, and then it can be non-challenging.
Wow, great. Rachel, you have one more question? Billy and Tina, you're going to wrap it up. I just want to see what that last question was.
So the last question says, what are some ways non-custodial parents and their families, i.e. grandparents, aunts, etc., can cope with parent alienation?
I'm going to take that as a single parent. I can probably deal with that because sometimes if the mom has the kids, then those kids usually build a relationship with the mom side of the family. But there's that whole other side of the family who sometimes, and Tina and Billy, you all can speak to this even more, like I didn't go over and push a relationship with the paternal grandparent. And if they reached out to me, then it was what it was. But the majority of the relationship was with the mom's side, my mom's side of the family. They know everybody on that side. They don't really know people on the father side. And me personally, I didn't have time as a single parent to push the father's side of the family. If they came, fine and well. But I was not going to look for them because I was trying to make sure that I was doing all that I could do to make the children, you know, one, whole, do what I needed to do. So to the person that sent the question, it's really about how important it is to you. But I would not get all in a tither and walk around with animosity, walking around like somebody owes me something, because the truth of the matter, 90% of most pregnancies in Black families was not planned. The only thing that was planned was sex that night, right? So the baby was not a part of the plan. So then mama's baby, daddy's maybe kind of thing comes into play. And I've even had to say hard things, even in counseling, to young women who are so disgruntled for having to go it alone. And as Akmir said, sometimes they have sex and it didn't mean anything. So they didn't love you, then you get pregnant. They may not even love the baby. They don't want neither one of you. Hard facts, but just the way it could be sometimes. But I think that children do need to know as much of their family as they possibly can. But I don't like to take my kids places where I don't trust the people. So I think you have to weigh it out on its own merit and see what works for you. And I found out that sometimes if your biological family is not there, God will always send somebody to make those kids know that they are loved and they're cared for. My kids have a wonderful godmother. They have wonderful goddaughters who are now their big sisters, who are closer to them than even blood. So Tina and Billy, you all want to say something to that?
No, you did. You answered it.
Right.
But what we do say to
Well, hold on.
couples,
Okay, go ahead.
we say to couples that pre-marriage counseling really is an important factor with prior to getting married. And when we look at, because there are all kind of things, your spouse could be an entrepreneur, you guys can buy a house, it can be all kind of situations that will at some time challenge your marriage. So you do need to learn the tools and know what is the mission of your marriage. Why are we married? What about us? And how to simultaneously do all of these other things while building your marriage, because your children are going to grow up and they're going to lead. All of these other things, your business will be established, your house, you'll have it for years. So all of these things will grow in time. So you have to make sure you put the time in to build your relationship. You have, Billy and I do what is called check-ins. We have check-ins, heart to heart. Let's sit down and have the heart conversations because it's necessary.
Yes. Well, guys, our time is up. I want to thank you so much for being here. That the panelists, our special guests, everybody did an amazing job tonight. I am so proud of you. I am praying that God will continue to give you wisdom, knowledge, and understanding as you grow more people in this world, and that you are being an example to show people. It may get a little tough, but we can make it. Those of you that would like some marriage and family counseling, do we have Tina's information, Rachel, and Billy's information? Those of you who could benefit from marriage and family counseling, they're excellent at what they do, but you're going to have to put the work in. You're going to have to put the work in. It does help. It's just about finding the right counselors for you. Remember, Black people, whenever we seek counseling, it doesn't mean that we're crazy. It means that in the multiplicity of counsel, there is safety. Everybody needs somebody to talk to, because you only know what you know. We are sharing Billy and Tina's information. There it is. Take a quick picture of it. And please call them. If you are a single parent and you'd like some help from me, please, by all means, give me a call or go to my website at amceny.org, amceny.org, and I'll be glad to help you. And also, you can get my book off of Amazon, The Joy of Single Parenting. The Joy of Single Parenting. And I'm sure that it'll be a blessing to you. So God bless you. Our time is up. Good night. Have a good week. See you next week. Thank you, everybody. Love you much. God is with you.